Welcome to this special interview on France 24 with the President of the Lebanese Republic, General Joseph Aoun. Mr. President, we must start with the importance of your visit to France and your talks with President Macron. What is its significance today at a time when Paris is seeking to secure international protection to support Lebanon politically and economically?
Certainly, the visit is first to thank France and President Macron for their contributions through the 5 countries, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, America, and France, that are implementing their commitments. And finally, it is the presidential commitment. France is a participant in the Observation Committee in South Lebanon. France is playing a role in UNIFIL through its participation in the forces present in these contingents in South Lebanon. In previous stages, France has organized several conferences to support the Lebanese economy. There is a conference that President Macron is working on to organize to help Lebanon economically in terms of improving the economic situation. This is why I'm in France.
Mr. Le Drian, the French presidential envoy, was here before your visit to France, and he conveyed certain messages. Did he discuss delaying the conference in support of Lebanon?
In a nutshell, the message is clear. An agreement with the IMF and reforms to make the conference work. The prerequisite for the conference is reforms and an agreement with the IMF. This is the key to a fruitful meeting.
And is Lebanon able to fulfill these conditions on schedule?
We started with our meeting with the IMF, and the government is starting to build on the agreements and the talks to reach an agreement as soon as possible. We don't have time to waste.
Is it true that Mr. Le Drian also conveyed some political messages regarding the necessity of negotiations or Lebanon's response to the American demand to raise the level of negotiations with Israel?
It was all about aid. This subject was not mentioned. Mr. Le Drian talked about aid, and the condition was the IMF and reforms.
Do you think that French pressure and support for Lebanon is strong enough? Doesn't it seem rather timid compared to the increased U.S. pressure?
France is playing its role. France, through its contacts in the world with European countries and with Arab countries, it will organize this conference. And I imagine if we, Lebanon, fulfill the 2 conditions, that is, regarding the IMF and the reforms, I imagine things are ready to go. Because countries are ready to help us. We were told, do the reforms, we're ready to help.
This regards economic issues. In your opinion, Mr. President, how can Lebanon gain the confidence of the international community today, especially since it is also required to fulfill a series of commitments and measures that it must fulfill, and in particular, the condition that the Lebanese state has exclusive control of arms on its territory?
You should go back to my inauguration speech. I talked about arms exclusivity. We have begun the stages of restoring trust with the states, between the state and the people and the international community. We will take some steps to that direction. We are carrying out reforms regarding arms in South Lebanon. The Lebanese army is doing its duty. The whole state is committed to implementing Resolution 1701. Hezbollah is cooperating in South Lebanon. There remains an answer to be provided to arms exclusivity. This is part of the national security strategy, and this is backed by the defense strategy. I mentioned all this in my inauguration speech.
Yes, you have spoken about this strategy, but there are some who say that maybe the question of Hezbollah's surrender of arms will not be on the table indefinitely. This issue has been brought up clearly. There are people expressing their opinion inside and outside of Lebanon and calling for specific mechanisms for Hezbollah to disarm.
Like I told you, in South Lebanon, the army is doing its duty. It's a regular operation. There have been some operations. South Lebanon is a vast area. This requires time. We now focus on this region. The next stage is working on other regions according to our strategy.
In the case of a specific dialogue?
Yes, within an internal dialogue. This is a national dialogue.
And maybe people are fearful that this situation will lead to a confrontation inside your country.
No, that's not true. With dialogue, you can have all solutions.
Regarding the recent and serious escalation by Israel, perhaps this reveals the fragility of the agreement signed in November for ceasing hostilities. Do you fear that there might be a return of war? Is there pressure coming from this escalation? Will there be pressure from Israel and America? Pressure on Libya? We have seen that the situation of Gaza has been clear since the beginning of the war.
A ceasefire agreement has been made. Both sides are aware. It is expected when there is such an agreement. Both parties have to abide by the agreement. Both sides are supposed to honor their signature, but Israel is always the initiator of ceasefire and violates the agreement, including staying at the 5 positions. It is not open to releasing the family. The monitoring committee and ourselves want to maintain the ceasefire. But conditions must be met, and France can help in that regard with the U.S. as the sponsors of the ceasefire agreement. We intensify contacts to avoid escalation.
And today, what are these guarantees? Lebanon is turning towards diplomatic options to guarantee its safety and hoping that Israel will pull back. But in exchange, the agreement must be respected on both sides. That is, there must be respect for Resolution 1700. And so there must be space for Israel to react as well. And Israel may believe that they have the right to continue to strike.
We have no choice but to use the diplomatic option. We will not break contacts internationally. I'm sure we will address this issue in a meeting with President Macron. As I told you, Resolution 1701 should be implemented. The army is doing its duty in South Lebanon, but you need to give it a chance. The fact that Israel maintains the occupation in the 5 positions in South Lebanon, this does not help. The Lebanese army is doing its job in vast areas, including mountainous areas with difficult geography, with limited materiel. The Lebanese government has integrated 4,500 soldiers into the Lebanese army. There are no guarantees for now, especially when it comes to the last ceasefire. This is not promising, but we'll continue to work.
There are clear and explicit American demands, although I don't know all the details of them, but it has to do with raising the level of negotiations, that is, moving from military committees to diplomatic and political committees.
Monitoring committee?
Are you ready to do that effort?
There's a monitoring committee. It's doing its job. It held meetings. It has reached the release of 5 prisoners from Israeli jails. The committee continues to work. If we come to solve the outstanding positions on the blue line, the 13 positions, there may be a joint military-civilian committee, just like the committee that was set up when the maritime borders were traced. But to reach this point, we need a ceasefire. We need to end Israel's occupation and to have a withdrawal from the 5 positions and the release of families.
So this is exactly what the Americans are asking for?
Yes, this must be carried out under the leadership of the UN and the U.S.
Mr. President, there are many different positions and situations concerning the implementation of a peace agreement with Israel, and the American envoy Witkoff talked about it. He said that there was a real possibility of normalization between Israel and Lebanon and Syria and Lebanon.
It's not currently on the table. All that is on the table is the withdrawal of the Israeli army from the 5 positions and the resolution of the 13 border positions and the release of families. We have to abide by the Arab Peace Initiative launched by the Arab Summit in 2022 in Lebanon, in Beirut, and as part of the Riyadh conference.
Of course, there are the Abraham Accords. That was during Trump's first term with the Arab countries. And then he talks about Saudi Arabia. And today, the new administration is talking about normalizing relations between Syria and Israel and Lebanon and Israel. And of course, we're looking to see how Saudi Arabia will intervene in all that.
We will share the Arab position.
So Lebanon is not ready for this normalization.
I wouldn't say we're ready or not. We will wait for the right conditions.
So let's move from the southern border to the eastern border. There's also a lot of pressure on that border. And there are tensions at the border, and we saw recent events. There's a Syrian security clearance in this area. There's a delegation meeting in Saudi Arabia with the Syrian Minister of Defense as well. And what is the role of this coordination? What is the role of Saudi Arabia to bring about an end of tensions on this Syrian-Lebanese border?
I met with the legitimate president on the sidelines of the extraordinary summit in Cairo. I told him about the need to control borders, to combat smuggling and trafficking. The meeting that should have taken place today or yesterday in Syria has been changed to today in Saudi Arabia. As per the Saudis' request, we agree that we will work under Saudi leadership.
This is a Saudi Arabian initiative.
Yes, it's a Saudi initiative. We green-lighted it.
So this is a role for bringing about peace in Lebanon.
I wouldn't say an appeasing role. It's a coordination role. We need coordination with Syria.
According to Syrian leadership, the accusations were quite clear. It's not only a case of smugglers. They also have tried to implicate Iran, and to say that Iran may have had a role to increase its influence in the region.
We clarified the situation. The clashes that took place between the Lebanese army and the Syrian side took place.
According to their accusations by the Syrian leadership.
There was no contact with them in the first place. We needed to clarify what happened. The Lebanese army fired against traffickers. This is why we needed this meeting, to have a direct channel of communication to combat trafficking and smuggling, to avoid any incidents as another party may get involved. There was another event around Baalbek. This, again, is a clash with smugglers. The goal of this meeting was to activate this coordination. In the meeting with Bashar, the president of Syria, told him, if you have a government, we will then have to start working through committees to demarcate the border, maritime and land borders. from the northeast through Belasher, right until the Al-Sheba farms. This requires committee work. This should be established, again, to draft borders and to start working on the repatriation of Syrian refugees.
Mr. President, today it seems that there is an opportunity for you, given the international changes, and in particular when we see with the new regime in Syria and the decline of the Iranian role in the region. Do you think it is possible today to build upon these changes for the benefit of Lebanon? And how can the Lebanese people also benefit from this change in situation?
Politics is based on circumstances. Of course, as you said, circumstances have changed. As we all see, we benefit from tremendous international support. As I said in the beginning of this conversation, reforms are needed to benefit from the support. This is an opportunity that we have. We need to seize this opportunity to carry through with the necessary reforms and to reestablish trust and receive this international aid. This is the responsibility that behooves us all Lebanese people. We need to rebuild our state and restore trust within the community and with the international community.
Yes, but building this trust may require the actual implementation of these reforms. We're talking about the question of Lebanese sovereignty and the issue of arms exclusivities. These international promises may remain conditional. To what extent are you actually capable today of meeting these
Let me be frank.
requirements?
I mentioned this when I was sworn in. I talked about arms exclusivity. I talked about reforms, monetary, economic, fiscal, judicial reforms to reestablish trust. We need to take steps to rebuild. These steps are not only a request on the international community, by the international community. This is a local request, matching a local need. We made a commitment to carry out reforms to establish trust and to regain the trust of the international community so that the international community may save Lebanon from this economic crisis and the wider region. We are committed to this. We have no other option. This is a Lebanese need before anything else.
Thank you, Mr. President, for this interview, and thank you to all of our viewers.